Hi, David.
Hi, Sarah.
I want to ask you today about something you talk about often, which is androgynous energy. So many people in the world are trying really hard to connect with feminine energy or to connect with the sacred masculine or find their masculinity or their femininity. And then you're always talking about how we need to have androgynous energy. So I think something needs to be unpacked here.
Okay, so we've talked about this subject a little bit, but not probably as we need to. Okay, so I've highlighted ages ago that when we use a lot of force, or a lot of force is actually used on us, we bring a lot of energy from the right side of our body, bring it to the left. So it's a bit like bolstering up what is our strongest sex, because our left side of our body will always be what is our primary sex energy and our primary sex consciousness. And when we do that, we create, it's like a force field. And we push, it's like pushing back everybody else's energy. So it's a bit, but from the start, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Yeah. So naturally, when we're in a lot of different scenarios, so if our mothers and fathers, it also depends on our heritage a little bit, or lineage, or whatever you want to call it, our relativity. If we do inherit a little bit of that sometimes, so depending on all the different circumstances that our parents have gone through, yeah, that is often then pushed on to us. And that's even before we take on, say, we've had a really crappy childhood or anything like that. And these days, unfortunately, I've found that so many people have been interfered with. And well, actually, it's not just these days. When I started this, 30 odd years ago, I couldn't believe how many people I found had been sexually interfered with. But so imagine, we'll go through a few scenarios. Say your mother doesn't have a great deal of confidence, right? Say things have gone on in her life where her confidence has been quite diminished. It doesn't necessarily mean that she's had hard parents. Often it's about circumstances, like sometimes, especially going back through the war years, a lot of things have gone on. People were shifting everywhere and people were displaced. Certain economic things happened, during the Depression and everything like that. There's a lot of circumstances that couldn't be controlled. But when that happens, of course, your parents, of course, they're, you lose, there's no structure in your life. So, and you don't have that stability. So they feel very unstable. And it's like having the rug pulled from out of them. So naturally enough, that is passed on to you. So, and it can go, and that lineage can go back quite a few years, quite a few generations. So sometimes I find that there's a little bit more of a diminished energy in some people, but what happens is that it's not always through the whole body. So imagine your left side is whatever sex you are and your right side is your opposite sex. So somebody who's had that type of upheaval in their life, their energy, they'll be strong in certain parts of the opposite side of their energy. So if we're looking through, usually everyone's nice and strong in whatever sex they are. So their left side is generally the stronger sex, unless, say, some women have had domineering mothers who just belittled them or didn't love them or whatever. There's a lot of different scenarios there. Then there's a lot of fracturing in their energy systems. And then all of a sudden, mainly then of course in their throat, from their nose down to here, it's like looking at everything's all shorted out, which is why then they can't say what they really feel. But there's lots of different areas and things like that. But we have to use our energy, like masculine and feminine, masculine, have to be like a whole cycle of energy. So they move right around our body. But it's almost like looking at the coils of an air conditioner sometimes. The way the energy's coils work. And
That's not something I've ever looked at.
and I know, but
Can we just go back? Can we just go back a moment? I just want to understand a couple of things first. So you had one scenario where maybe your mother has been underconfident, and then you said sometimes that means that some parts of your right side, which if you're a woman is your masculine side, then get over dominant. Is that a kind of compensation because of the lack of confidence of the mother?
You're trying where you're lacking on one area, you try and drag energy from a different part. And then you could probably think that it could be completely misdiagnosed and say that that person has probably had a lot of dominant male energy, when in fact that's not really the case.
They dragged their own male energy to make up for what was lacking in their feminine energy.
Yeah.
And then the other example you gave was somebody who had a very dominant mother, for example.
Yeah.
And then that makes their, if it was a girl, that makes their feminine energy weaker. Is that right?
Yeah, it shuts off the energy. So they'd have a lot of, say, from all across in certain parts, especially in the chest area, there's a lot of, in your nurturing and empathic body, it's very, then that energy will actually come out. It'll sit out here.
Oh, so it'll kind of separate off almost.
Completely and utterly separate, and it'll come out here.
And then you feel kind of split off from yourself.
Sorry?
Is that right? Then you feel kind of split off from yourself.
Yeah, you do. But then also you'd be relying on you might rely on more your male side then to get those messages. But then when a male actually tries to have talk to you, because it's not using this side, then you can shut down. I mean, it's so complicated. It's
very complicated, but it's interesting, and I think it's worth going through a few scenarios because of that, because it makes it a bit more relatable for people. So then what I'm seeing is also you then get the generations, because this child who was shut down by their mother and then shut down their own feminine, and then they start to use masculine energy, and then they start to become very dominant to the next generation, and then you start to get the lineage pattern.
Yeah, and when I look at people who've had that, as soon as I look at the energy in their legs, basically from their feet up to their knees, there's very little energy flowing, generally on the right side, and then sometimes it's even on the left side too, because it sort of overcompensates, which means that you're looking outwardly all the time to try and, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? How do I fix this? So as soon as your energy splits, your energy, it goes out, which means that you're almost looking for shiny objects. It's like you're looking
to find yourself, but you look outside of yourself to find yourself. And you don't even realize that you're doing that.
No. And
can I ask about a couple more scenarios, because we're leaving the guys out here. So supposing a boy, like, of course we've got mothers and fathers, but I imagine that what's the scenario, a couple of scenarios that might happen to boys with dominant or weak fathers or mothers or something like that?
Well, sometimes when you've got a domineering father and their energy, what happens is we often become, and it's the same for women too, where we've had very domineering parents, that the middle section, it's like you have this big massive void right in the center. So people look like and it's some people's energy, your opposite sex can sort of come straight over, right over to this side to try and bolster it up a bit, and then there's hardly anything left. But there will be this massive gap. It's a hard picture to paint, but yeah, basically the left side is sort of very truncated and it goes like this. But especially then, that person's legs are complete. They're almost like, because anyone who's got PTSD or trauma, their legs end up going just to physical energy or all the crap that's going on in the world between 3 and 40 feet. And they're highly detuned. And then although they use a lot of their spirit energy, then they can't ground the spirit energy. So that it's one, like they can't relate to everything that's going on because the energy can't make a whole full cycle to tell you what's really going on in your life. So, and it's the same for like, you know, soldiers who've been, or anyone who's had PTSD. As soon as you unwind this opposite side, it's because when you're traumatized, you drag so much energy and so much power. Any bit of power, it's like you're trying to find the generator set for your body. You know, anywhere you can find a little bit of power, you're just trying to drag it over to the left side to just basically keep it moving, just so you can register something happening, even if it's right or wrong. No matter what, you just try to find that power to move the actual energy, move the consciousness, and then get some sort of an energy flow so that you can figure out what's going on in life, which then can be, unfortunately, quite wrong because you're dragging in all this information from here, there, and everywhere, and it's all helter-skelter, and it's not
in the right place.
It's not right. And then it's how you view something is generally a bit crazy sometimes, because it's a bit like asking your foot what your head's really figuring out. You know, it's very difficult because we're dragging in different areas to solve a problem that is almost unsolvable, because you don't have enough sources and enough senses that are actually active, because, you know, we are a sensory body and you have to use all these different multiple sensories that we have, and it's very damn difficult.
Okay, I have another question that I know people will ask, so I must ask you.
Yeah.
I've heard people ask this before. And I think there may be different teachings even, and I can't remember exactly, but I know that many people will say, oh, I thought that the left side of the body was the feminine and the right side was the masculine, or maybe it's the other way around. It's not something I've ever learned, but they have a different view. How do you know? Like you said, the left side is your own gender, and then the right side is the opposite gender from, how do you know that?
The only reason I know that is because it's how we use our spirit energy and how we use our soul energy.
How does that tell you that? Sorry, I just people ask me these questions and
lots and lots of self-truth. Just it takes a lot of following where energy comes from, basically. And when you use neutral energy, you can go through all the different analytics and you can find where the actual energy comes from. So when it's like tracing it back, it's like you're the energy detective. Okay, and that's how I know. I mean, I often say you're like an engineer. Sorry?
You're like an engineer and a detective, so absolutely, I think that's right.
I can't tell you how long I spend on going back through different timelines and different energy things and tracing back the energies, because you've got to trace back to where they come from. You're a little bit like an auto electrician in a way, because you've got to go back and find out where that energy comes from and where it's all starting, and otherwise you don't.
Okay, so I'm going to say that you've done the work you've really worked on this to come to this conclusion, and then
Yeah, and
anyone who's listening, take it or leave it. But that's where we're starting from, that your left side is your own gender, whatever it is, and the right side is the opposite gender. So let's come back now to this thing about masculine and feminine and androgynous, and because it's very clear from everything you've said that we need both.
Yep.
And we need not to have gaps, and we need not to be dragging one energy over into the other.
Yep. So how do we do it?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. So first of all, we show people how to use a lot of their sensories, okay? In lots and lots of different ways. We turn people's sensories, basic foundation sensories, back on.
So these are like your subtle senses.
So absolutely so subtle sensories. So we teach people how to find where the energy actually moves through your body and just slowly feel it, because your energy and your consciousness have to work as one. Yeah. So, and to do that, we can get the energy flowing through, but as soon as we start going through, we'll find there's little bits of overpowering or somewhere where the energy is being taken out. So as soon as we find that, we can sort of eliminate where the energy is being taken out, bring that energy back onto the self, and then all of a sudden it starts to move. And then it's just like going through, and I mean, there's millions and millions of cycles that we do in seconds. Yeah.
And that's your work. I mean, that we don't need to understand how you do that. You've taken years to learn how to do that, and that's your work.
Basically using neutral energy. Yeah. So androgynous and neutral energy go hand in hand.
So what's the difference between androgynous and neutral energy?
They're basically the same.
The one's kind of like a masculine, feminine, sort of, one's a positive, negative.
Yeah. It has to be positive, negative, negative, positive. It also has to be masculine, feminine, masculine, so that there's no overpowering of either sex. And
we need a little explanation here as well, because you often talk about this positive, negative, negative, positive, or masculine, feminine, feminine, masculine. Yeah. And I half get it, but it would be nice to get it a bit more clearly.
Imagine it like an energy cycle, or like electrical cycle, probably. So it's like you're sending.
I didn't do that at school either.
Yeah, so you're sending energy over, but then it's got to come back. Yeah.
So you've got the feminine going to the masculine has to go to the feminine as well.
The feminine, and then masculine has to feminine goes back to masculine.
Okay, and the same with positive and negative.
It's always balancing up, absolutely all the time.
And are these same as yin and yang in the Chinese system? Because to me, yin and yang is that masculine and feminine. It's also that positive and negative, and it's that very kind of flow.
Basically the same thing.
Okay,
Same thing. Just different name, whatever. But it's just the way that they showed me we needed, because I was looking at the energy cycles one day and I said, hang on, the energy's not coming back. It's going over, but it's not cycling. Or because there's a lot of difference between energy that it goes from, say, masculine to feminine, feminine to masculine. It's not recycling. So when energy is in a recycle mode, it would go, say, masculine to feminine, but then it might go feminine to feminine, or it might go masculine to masculine, or it might go whole cycles of feminine, or whole cycles of masculine. And you've got all these cycles and cycles and cycles and cycles of energy going through. They're all just one sex, which means that you can't find a whole question to ask an answer, because you're always only getting half a question. Wherever you've got, say, all masculine energy or all feminine question, it means that you're not getting a full cycle of a question. to
So is that
basically,
question when you're kind of, it's like you're looking for some energy at a
yeah.
subtle level.
So
You
when
might
you,
not have
so,
it in your
yeah,
head, but you're looking
yeah,
for something.
yeah. Say you're trying to find a problem. Why can't I manage this, or why can't I manage that? Because your energy is asking an unlateral. It's not lateral question because it's only asking in one perspective.
So it's only asking, it's like asking half of it. So it can never get the whole answer.
No, you can't get the whole answer because you're only asking half the question.
That's quite funny.
And then it gets really frustrating because, well, I've asked the bloody question. Why can't I find the answer? Because there's no answer to it because you're only asking half the question. It's not relevant.
And the question invites the answer. So if only half the question is there, only half the answer will be there.
Exactly.
They're kind of part and parcel. They're also kind of yin and yang almost, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
They go together. Okay, so we need.
It's almost like asking. It's almost like most people ask your heart, but they forget to ask the soul. So that's why most people's questions are like 95% heart-based. But if you don't use your light body, you don't actually ask your soul energy. So you're only asking a fraction of the question, which means your intuition and instinct are completely cut off.
Yeah, which would be very frustrating
Very.
and rather annoying. Okay. So this
that can be applied to everything, you know, absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Because everyone say, oh, use your heart, darling, use your heart. No, you have to use your spirit energy. You've got to use your heart, which is the interpreter, and you've got to use your soul, which tells you what the hell's going on.
But unless you've kind of got that turned on, you don't really know how to use it. So it doesn't matter what anyone says to you, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, you can say, oh, I'm going to go and use all my soul. Well, if you don't know how to turn it on, where to find it, it's a bit problematic. You've got to go back to all the basics.
Yeah. Okay. So another question I want to ask about this androgynous and masculine and feminine. When we talk about masculine and feminine energy in this way, do they have anything to do with femininity and masculinity?
When I first, I'll give you a strange scenario. So absolutely donkeys years ago, right? When I first found this, and I had 3 gay guys who I was helping with like just different life problems, right? So I thought, well, this is going to be interesting because I thought, will that actually affect somebody who's actually gay go from, being, a gay guy to all of a sudden thinking, oh, I find women really attractive now. And it had absolutely, I mean, honestly, I've helped so many gay people, men and women, and it has no effect whatsoever when all their energies are all androgynous. Isn't that strange? It doesn't have any effect, but yes, it can affect. It does affect the way we sense things, feel things, get energy going. We can completely and utterly shut down to certain things. All sorts of things that should be easy. It's like sometimes we can't even recognize. It's like you've got this whole prospect of opportunity sitting right underneath your nose, and you're completely oblivious to us. It's like you can't see the trees.
And is that a little bit like that question thing that you've only got half the question happening, so to speak? It's like you just can't get a full rounded perspective because you're not cycling properly.
And your perspective goes really crazily. So we have all these different aspects of ourselves that I've sort of touched on before, where we use depth and ascension, as above, as below. Well, everyone's sort of aware of that one. But it also really affects the way you use your extension expansion. What is perfect about yourself and how you multiply it. Because if you're not using that you look a bit like barcodes that are real long and short. So with this part here, so where they're both on a mean, where they're equal, you're seeing equal perspectives, right? So you get something that's lateral. But otherwise, you can see there's an opportunity, and then the next thing, it's like, oh no, I better not do that. So it basically pushes everything way out of balance.
So somehow one of the things you're explaining is why people, for example, sometimes they want to do something, but then they don't, or they can't, or they lose confidence, or like all kinds of ways that we sabotage ourselves, it seems, are coming either because we're not using androgynous energy or not using neutral energy. And then we've got all our energies kind of got mixed up, and there are bits missing and there are bits that are too strong. And so we can't get a kind of clear flow of functionality, if you like. You function a bit here and then you don't function there, and then this bit fires really hard, but this one misses out altogether.
It also means that you stay only looking in a very physical perspective, but you also only look at a very diminished everyday consciousness. So you don't use any subconsciousness where we get all the answers for everything from, like, because your subconscious feeds in, all your intuition and instinct, and there's so many mini processes that are all in our body and just say, yeah, let's go for it. But you don't get that impetus. It's like, I'm waiting to get a message.
Yeah, you can't follow through. I know that feeling so well. I used to have that a lot. And I learned to be able to follow through with things. That's one of the things. It's like those gaps filled in and the energy balanced out. And then you can have an idea and you can kind of follow it with action, even if you don't know exactly what to do or how to do it.
Exactly. But the other part of the story is that when the energy's more equal, we get all the building blocks in place. Because otherwise we can't go from, you have an idea and you just throw all your money at something and then you wonder why it hasn't happened, because you've got to get all these building blocks in place before you can actually do something, otherwise it just falls over, so it's really important to do all the preparation too, and that energy shows you where to get all the preparations, and all those preparations, then once you get to the actual part or the doing, it's just par for the course then, because you've done all these little preparations to because you got that foundation there, you've checked out, because as soon as you can ask lots and lots of questions, and that's what your energy does, your energy goes through and asks. That's why the more information that you can receive, the more relaxed, because you're asking trillions and trillions and trillions of questions through your sensory things, and some of them are on a subliminal conscious and subconscious level that you're not even aware of, but they're going on because your intuition and instinct tell you, eventually. And sometimes the more work you do with that, the more you're really aware of all these questions that you're really asking, because you seem to put a lot more time in asking all these questions to say, well, is that in my benefit, or is it really, if the energy's going out somewhere else, is it for somebody else's benefit and it's not even for me?
And so you start to it's like you can feel your energy, you can look at decisions, or you can look at plans, and you can feel the energy of them, and it's like you can probe into different parts of it and see what's going to happen there. Not the exact events, but you can feel how does the energy feel there? Is this something I want to experience or not?
And on that note, because I've talked to this about a lot of clients, and they say, we scan it. And I said, yeah, you do. And they said, it's like when we read a book, we sort of know what part's good, that's all crap. Then we go to the good bit. We know that's going to be good, and we sort of scan through that bit because we know there's some good bit in there. And then we get to the next bit, we know it's all shit. we go to the next bit. It's sort of like, because you scan, your energy and your consciousness tells you where there's something that's relative to you and where to find all the good stuff, you know. That's probably a different perspective, but it's also how it works. Because we are talking about a lot of different perspectives, you know. It's just, that's how, you know, people say, that's how a lot of people define it to me, because we learn. And the other thing is, if you're not using your androgynous energy, you're looking at how everybody else works, because you're trying to find the optimum energy cycles. You're trying to find all the conscious cycles. How you might know you're doing it, but you're doing it because everyone can generally tell something about somebody else's energy. Oh man, they really know how to work that, and they got it all figured. How do you know? Because you scan them. Someone who's, because your energy, you know where you're not getting the information. So if you don't get that information, what do? You scan everybody else. Oh, that guy over there seems to have it all figured. How? How do you know? It's not just because he's rich, or it's not just because he looks smart or whatever, because that's not always the case. That guy's just got it figured out, because your energy is telling you that that guy's energy is working harmoniously. It's balanced. They're getting the information, and then they're able to process that information, because it's not the answer, it's all the question cycles, because you ask billions and billions of questions before you get any type of little answer. But when you're happy and you're joyful, you're asking trillions and trillions of questions, and then you make those full cycles all the way go through, and they're all androgynous, which means, you know, you're getting a harmonious balance of absolutely everything.
And you're getting full answers. And
then you get an answer that's relevant. Yeah, that's right. You get full answers. And then what happens? You're happy as Larry.
Your life works better, doesn't it?
Yeah, and because when that happens, you're confident.
Yeah.
But if you don't get that, you're not confident. It's like, shit, I hope that's going to work. And then otherwise, it's sort of like you're on tender hooks all the time, because you're not really too sure, you know?
Yeah. So what?
You don't want it, because otherwise it's like you're waiting for everything to come crashing down. Yeah. Because then that's what I say. You've got to,
this is where you get answers to your questions, and so your life gets better. Yeah. So things work, which before didn't work. Really, it's very simple, isn't it? And that's all. Androgynous energy is a key component of all of that. In a way, I feel like we're opening up so much in this conversation, and at the same time, I think it's time to finish it here. What it really shows me is just how important this topic of androgynous energy is. It's just very, 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 very important, and it's important for a lot of different things about being able to live and being able to live well. And that's really the most important thing that comes across.
The biggest thing I'll say is it takes a lot of complicated things out. You get rid of the complications, and all of a sudden you start to see how everything sort of works. So when you use androgynous energy, it's like an even flow of energy, and you're having a totally different conversation, because there's no you got to do it my way, or it's not going to happen. You know, it's like a conversation between lots and lots of levels of different types of curiosities of what's actually going on. Yeah.
Well, that's definitely worth having, I would say. So, yeah, thank you very much for sharing all of that, David. Yeah, that's pretty illuminating.
Well, you've given some good insight yourself. So it does. I mean, we do know it works.
Yeah, that's for sure. Thank you.